The Chinese government is denying allegations today that it was behind what could be one of the largest data breaches in U.S. history, calling these allegations counterproductive and irresponsible. The data breach compromised the personal records of at least 4 million current and former federal employees. Although the White House won't assign blame to China, U.S. officials believe the cyber attack was launched from there. The hack comes at a troubled time for U.S.-China relations. Against U.S. warnings, China is building artificial islands in international waters in the South China Sea. Islands China is equipping with aircraft runways and mobile artillery. Joining me now is Senior Fellow for China Studies, Director of the Digital and Cyberspace Policy Program at the Council on Foreign Relations, Adam Siegel, and Chief Political Correspondent for Politico, Glenn Thrush. So, Adam, let me start with you first. What can you tell us about the breach and what the motivation would be in terms of trying to access millions and millions of federal employee records?
Well, right now, all we really know for sure is that the attackers seem to be based in China, and that the data that they gathered could be used either for criminal purposes or for espionage. Who directed them, who actually wants all that data, we're still uncertain about.
But we think that this data may have been connected to the same group of people who hacked into 2 big health insurance companies in the U.S. Was it Anthem and Premera? What do you see as the motivation there? I mean, what sort of common cause could these group of hackers have with both federal records and health insurance records?
So it seems that one of the things that the hackers want to do is to trick you into opening an email,
right.
Clicking on a PDF link or opening a file. And so one of the ways that they can do that is collect as much data as they can about you, so they can really specialize the email that they send you that then tricks you into opening it. So we think they're building a database on Americans, particularly Americans who work for the federal government.
Glenn, I guess I wonder, we're having this major national debate about the security state, the surveillance blanket. Some part of that, some little corner of that blanket is being rolled back. Do you think stories like this change or shape public opinion in the converse, which is to say, sort of make people think, well, wait a second, should we be rolling back these sort of surveillance mechanisms if the Chinese are actively trying to thwart us or gain access to our top records?
It is a really interesting dynamic. You know, we had this very involved debate over the collection of metadata, which if we believe what the government is telling us, doesn't involve individual records. Here we have a massive loss, and we've seen this as an extension of those 2 health insurers, which I think we're talking north of 50 to 80 million Social Security numbers that are now in the hands of these hackers, which dwarfs any potential damage that presumably has been done on the metadata stuff. So to some extent, we've been concerned about this trickle, and we're really dealing with this torrent. The issue here is whether or not this stuff really begins to be used against people. If we see this operationalized, either from a national security perspective or people start losing money, I think then they'll pay attention. Right now, it just seems to be more of an abstraction. What
is, Adam, the best way to respond to a breach like this? I mean, we know that the U.S. has publicly held China accountable last year, charging 5 in the Chinese army with hacking. Is that a deterrent for future hackers, or is that just us trying to regain some sense of our, replace the ego that may have been sort of broken by allowing such a breach?
Well, we've tried to name and shame the Chinese, and clearly that's not working, right? As you said, we indicted these 5 PLA hackers, and the hacking has not really decreased at all. This spring, the president passed an executive order that allows him to sanction individuals and to sanction the companies that benefit from the theft of this property, data or intellectual property or other things that the Chinese are going after. So we'll have to wait and see if the next step is to actually go after companies or units.
Glenn, I am struck by the fact that the White House would not say that this was the Chinese. I think Xi Jinping is coming to the White House in September. So we obviously don't want to endanger sort of public bilateral relations, but clearly this is an issue for the White House, as is China's aggression in the South China Sea, which Ash Carter is, suggested is a very, very, very bad move.
It's a huge issue, and I remember a certain Secretary of State during the first Obama term who talked about the pivot to China, don't you? I can't recall what her name might be. And this is clearly going to be an issue that Hillary Clinton or whoever else the next president might be, is going to inherit. And I think on a debate stage, certainly against a Republican, if Hillary is there, it's an entirely legitimate question to ask her, both on the issue of currency manipulation, which has been a huge sore point between the 2 countries for time immemorial, and why she didn't get tougher tougher, why she didn't spearhead more of a policy. I think that is a legitimate question to ask her.
Well, right. Lindsey Graham said today, I fear a cyber Pearl Harbor is increasingly more likely if we do not invest in the necessary infrastructure to protect our nation. Weird that Lindsey Graham is talking about investment in government infrastructure, but is that misplaced sort of fear-mongering, or do you think that's legit, Adam?
I think it's misplaced. The idea of a cyber Pearl Harbor, of some attack coming out of nowhere that kills 3,000 people, is not really what we have to be worried about. We have to be worried about these daily attacks that are more, 1,000 cuts that steal our data, that steal our intellectual property. And we're not doing well on that either, right? We're clearly falling behind.
Adam Siegel and Glenn Thrush, thank you guys for your time. Happy